Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. As you can see, we've got a totally contrasting day today, but the wind is up, so it's nice to see the sun out. It is the first week of August, so you know what that means. It is time for a plot tour, so we'll start from the beginning like we normally do, just over there, and we'll run through both plots, and I like to make a little to-do list just to take check of what's going on. So come on guys, let's get stuck in. So here in the UK we have had quite a bit of rain recently, so I haven't really had the chance to trim the grass. I find cutting grass in the wet is pointless really, it really doesn't work. So once we've got a little bit more dry weather, I will come in here and just give that a real good trim down, just so it's a little bit more neater when my car isn't here. As you can see, the sweet corn has already grown really tall. We'll pop over there in a moment. And just down here, that all needs a really good trim up as well, just to neaten it up. But again, no point of doing that until we've had some dry weather. And I don't know if you can tell, but I've still got lots of wasps hanging around that compost bin at the moment. So they seem to be absolutely fine. I'm going to keep them in there. I have doused it with water a few times, but I mean, we have had plenty of storms over the last few days, so I think they should be fine until the end of summer. Now, I don't want to hang around here too much because this is where the wasps do seem to hang out, but I just wanted to show you down here. So this is the apple tree. We've got quite a few apples on it this year, maybe 8 to 12. It's the second year, so we only got a couple last year. And these are a eating apple variety. I believe they're called Fiesta. So I'm quite hopeful for those. And then down here we have got the pot marigolds. So we've got a few which are now starting to go over. I'll let them just self-seed down here. And I've already seen some little seedlings for the poached eggplant. And down here, these are the calendula, so they'll just keep self-seeding throughout the year, and we should have some flowers up until the first frosts. But if they do self-seed, along with the poached eggplant, just leave them in. If they do die in the frosts, there'll be plenty of seed in there to germinate in the spring anyway. And it's just an effective ground cover over the winter period as well. Just down this side, we've got all the rhubarb. We've done with picking that. You shouldn't really pick that past July, so plenty of water in over the summer months, not that it's needed it lately, just to keep them going, and then they'll get a nice feed in the autumn. And just above it we've got the beautiful cooking apple tree. So when I first took this plot on, it was just a stump. He'd cut it down right to the bottom for some reason, but I let a few of the shoots grow quite tall, and over the last couple of years they've actually got quite big, and we're starting to get quite a nice harvest off this tree. I'm not too sure what the variety of apple this is, but it's definitely a cooking apple. They get really big and they're quite sour to eat raw. Down here we've got more of the rhubarb, and then this is my smaller pear tree. So this was already here, like the big one, when I got here, so I'm not too sure what it is, but it doesn't do quite as well. The fruit on this tree is a lot more chunkier, and they do ripen really nicely, and they turn into a really nice juicy pear compared to the other one, which is more of a really hard conference. But for some reason we don't get as many pears on this one. One thing I did notice with this pear tree this year, it put on a second load of blooms, and we seem to have some small pears still trying to form. I've never known a fruit tree to put on a second load of blossom, but yeah, this one seemed to have done it, and we do have a few more pears to come, but it's probably its best year so far. I've probably counted 10-15 fruits on it this year. As we just pan round, we've got the really tall, beautiful sunflowers with those burnt oranges and reds. We've still got a couple more which are yet to bloom. And then we've got the jungle of sweet corn. So these have all popped up quite recently actually, since all the nice rain. And we've had quite a bit of wind, so I'm hoping that they've got plenty of good pollination. And we seem to also have quite a few cobs forming on there already. I don't think they're going to be ready just yet. I'll give them a few more weeks to thicken up. But yeah, it shouldn't be too long before we've got beautiful fresh sweet corn. For those of you that don't know how sweet corn is pollinated, all the pollen that your sweet corn plant needs is held up here right on the tall spikes with all of those dainty bell-like flowers. And in each of those flowers, all the pollen that your plant needs is held. So it isn't like a tomato plant or your normal standard plants that are pollinated by insects, as it's the wind that will knock the pollen down onto your cobs. As the wind starts to blow, the pollen will fall from the little flowers right down onto your cobs. So down here you'll notice that each of your cobs have these tassels hanging out, and each little strand accounts for just one of your little sweet corns, pollen will fall down onto the cob and that will pollinate and create the little yellow kernel that you get inside your cob. Now sometimes you'll find that your cobs are missing a few of the little kernels inside, and that's just because the pollen wasn't able to reach one of those strands. My plot is quite a windy plot, so these pollinate pretty well without me having to do anything, but if not, you can just go in and give them a real good shake. And just down here in the far bed from the sweet corn, we have got the sweet peppers. Now the sweet peppers are just down here. They do pretty well. Now I am worried that the sweet corn might have shaded them out a little bit too much, so we might have a problem with the ripening process, but we've got plenty of fruits on them, and if anything the sunflowers are actually protecting them a little bit from the wind. The same with the sweet corn. I do find that peppers can quite easily flop over and you do need to stake them, but this year I don't seem to have had that problem. There's plenty of green peppers on them. This one's had a little bit of a munch, so we'll take that off. But yeah, we just need to wait for these to start to ripen now. We've still got this little fella to flower. I say little actually, he's part of this tall fella here. But I believe it's an electric yellow, but I'm not too sure of the name. But this fella just here, he seems to have gone over, but he is going to produce lots of seeds for all the birds hopefully. Just look at that burnt red burgundy beautiful head he's got. He hasn't got a huge face, but he is almighty tall. Just look. Shouldn't be too long before all of his little offsets are given off their own little faces as well. The job I really must do before I leave today is harvest all of these beans. Now a few of them might have gone over, so yeah, we need to rip all of them up, get all the beans harvested and take them home. And I also would like to try and weed out those two beds at the back, because those seeds that have germinated haven't got a chance to grow in that. A lot of these are the yellow bush beans. It's the first year that I've done bush beans and I'm actually really happy with them. If anything, they were too prolific. I don't quite know what I'm going to do with them all. And in amongst here, we've also got a tomato plant or two. So yeah, we really do need to give this bed a real good tidy up. In these two beds we have got the beetroot on the left hand side. I think I also grew some of the purple veined sorrel. Now some of you have warned me that it is a little bit of a thug, so I will go careful if it does start to self-seed anywhere. And then in this bed down here on the right we have got the spring onions, which have started to germinate quite well actually, but like I say, these need a really good weed because they're really not gonna do well with all of that competition in there. This whole area could really do with a real good clear up, so I think this is going to be my focus next time I'm down here at the weekend. The bay tree, that's starting to get swamped a little bit by the bindweed, so we'll have to get in there. We did have the scabious, that seems to have gone over, so we'll give that a bit of a chop back and that should bounce back. The hyssop over there, again the grass and the bindweed is starting to take it over a little bit, so we do need to give that a good tidy up in there. We do have a problem with quite a lot of the weeds. I've got tulip bulbs in there, I don't want to disturb them too much, which is why I don't really dig around in there. I do think I need to just bite the bullet and get it done. It's going to take a little while for it to fill out, but the project planter is still looking rather quite handsome. This is a empty bed at the moment, so we did have the failed garlic crop in here that didn't do too well, and I did plant a tomato which seems to be doing okay, and we did have a few sunflowers but they got taken out in the wind, and all we seem to have growing at the moment is plenty of weeds and grass. But just look at that sunflower, so many little heads on that bobbing around. I'll take you around on the other side because it looks a lot prettier. There you go, you can see more of his faces now. Look how many we've got, and we've still got plenty more to come. I just love that burnt orange centre with the yellow tips. I'm hoping that this will produce lots of seed and just self-seed all over the place. I suppose whilst we're down here we may as well admire the pear tree. I did give a little update yesterday. It's absolutely laden with pears to the point where a lot of the branches look like they're going to snap. It didn't know about June drop by the sounds of things. I've never had to take pears off this before, but I am just going to leave them and see how they go. We do have a community cider project where you can give a few apples and pears and then you get some free cider in return. So if all else fails, we've got free cider. The pine berries have spread all over the place. I've only had these in a couple of years, and I think I brought 6 plants, and I've already filled this space really well. They've even started to take over some of the path, so you do have to go a little bit careful with these, but if you're a fan of strawberries or even the pine berries themselves, then they are a really good crop and definitely worth their money. In this raised bed we have got the radishes and the beetroot on the left hand side, and on the right we have got some carrots which have been in for quite a while now, so I really must get them up soon, and then as soon as they're out we'll be able to sow some seeds in our August video. It was only a couple of weeks ago that we sowed some carrots in here, the same time that we sowed the beetroot and the spring onions, but the carrots don't seem to be showing themselves just yet. So I think I am going to have to sow some more carrots in here, but I am going to have to hurry because August is probably the last time you really want to be sowing your carrots. And then between the two beds we have got that handsome chap who has well and truly gone over now. So he was the first sunflower to bloom on the plot, and he's going to have plenty of seeds that I'm hoping will self-seed all over the place for next year because he was huge. And then at the back we have got the 3 artichokes that I planted up, which seem to do really well. I do just need to stake them up as they do seem to be flaying about quite a bit in this wind. So we've just come to take shelter under the pear tree from the wind, just to come and have a little look at the little pond. I've got 2 more, this is the smallest of them. And this was already on the plot, but I have planted it up myself with some irises, some of the mare's tail, but the duckweed or frogweed, that just stays in this pond regardless. I find out of my 3 ponds this is always full of frog spawn, and I get lots of tadpoles, but I don't find too many frogs in here. They seem to like my other small pond, which was my original pond. We'll go and have a little look at that in a little while, and also the big one. Down here we have got the broad bean bed. I was leaving these on to dry out, but we've had so much rain they have all just started to rot off the plant. So we'll dig these up, give it a real good weed, and then we can think about what's going to go in here next. The parsnips are looking really lush. I gave them a really good thinning out a few weeks ago, so I shouldn't need to do that anymore, and you don't need to give them a feed because that could lead them to fork. So just making sure that they've got plenty of water is all you really need to do with your parsnips. So just at the back there, they are the parsnips, and in this bed, if you remember, we sowed the carrots, but we don't seem to have any germination in them. So I do think that it's the seeds rather than anything else, because in this bed closest to us in here we've got absolutely fine germination on the spring onions. I was a little worried because this part of the plot doesn't get much sunlight because of the elder tree, but if the spring onions have germinated fine, then the carrots shouldn't have a problem either. Nothing is really going on in this bed at the moment, so it's going to become my asparagus bed, but I'm going to need to give it a real good feed. So over the next few months from autumn onwards, I'm going to be putting loads of manure, compost and anything really that I can do to just top up the soil and the nutrient levels, as asparagus are really heavy feeders. But at the moment it's just covered in weeds, and we've also got some lettuce which has gone to seed as the bees absolutely adore the little yellow flowers on them. If we don't have too much of a wet autumn, then I might be able to save some of the seeds. If not, it's just for the bees. This mint is now starting to come out in bloom. I find that the bees absolutely adore mint plants, but so do the flies. I've got a few mint plants, the other one is now starting to go over. This mint has well and truly flopped over, so I'm going to give this a hack back. What I do is I just tend to keep an eye on the plant, and as soon as I notice that the pollinators don't seem to hang around it anymore, that's when I start to cut it back. The strawberries have put on lots of growth. I think they just needed a real good water in here. I know that I topped it up with quite a bit of manure, so they've got plenty of food in there from a couple of years ago. And I did go in there the other day and give them a good tidy up, which I brought you guys along in a previous video. I might just give these a little sprinkle in of some chicken manure pellets, just to give it a little bit of feed throughout the summer and into autumn. I left this little patch of brambles to go wild because I noticed lots of flowers on it this year, and we've got plenty of fruit. A few of them are starting to ripen up, so we'll pick a few of these to take home. I've managed to keep the seating area all nice and tidy. I know it's only been a week, but I know what I'm like. I think it's probably because I know you guys can see. But on the little table there we have got another coreopsis, so It's a bright yellow one. I found it's quite like a cosmos with all the ferny foliage that it's got. It seems to flower from August to September, so a bit of a late flowering summer plant, which is exactly what I need down in the border. So we'll go and find a nice spot for that later and get that nice and planted up. Down here the currants seem to be doing absolutely fine. We've still got a little bit of the curl on the leaf, but that doesn't affect the harvest, and I have left all of these berries on for the birdies, so hopefully they'll find them a little bit later in the summer into the autumn time. And look at that beautiful rose. We've got quite a few blooms on it this time round. I got my first blooms probably in late spring, early summer, and then I've recently got this next flush. If only you guys could smell this. It is absolutely beautiful. So they say it smells like myrrh. I don't know what myrrh smells like, but if it is, it smells stunning and it's so strong. So it's Woollerton Rose, Woollerton Hall. It's a David Austin rose, and it's just covered in these beautiful blooms. Climbing along this trellis is my grapevine. Now we don't seem to have any flowers on it this year. It is a purple grape variety. I can't remember the name, but from when we had the girls it didn't get much sunlight, so it's never really done too well. But I was hoping this year might have been its year, but it does seem to have put on quite a bit of growth, so I'll give it a good feed and hope next year we'll get some fruit from it finally. I do have a second vine which is in my fruit cage, which has got plenty of fruit. I'll show you that a little bit later, but I will be doing some videos on how to take care of your grapevine and how to prune it and when. You'll be happy to know that I've kept the shed nice and tidy for you guys, and at the back there, that is the yew that I'm going to be doing a bonsai project with. I done the conifer yesterday, but I'm just going to let it put on a little bit more growth before I repot that up and start hacking away. On this side we've got the polyhouse, we've got the rather large pond here and the fruit cage, but I'll take you all through that. I just thought I'd take you through the little box containers that we've got down here. So down in that far corner we have got the beetroot. The beetroot hasn't done too well this year. I don't think it had much nutrient levels in there, so I must top that box up with some extra compost this year and think about what to plant in there next. Then down here in the next container we have got the radishes, which are doing really well, but I must get them out because I've got spring onions in there as well, and they don't have too much room at the moment. They are blocking out quite a bit of sunlight. Down here we have got the 3 patty pans. They seem to be coming on quite well, but they haven't shown any fruit just yet. It's all male flowers, so they're just testing the air to see if we've got enough pollinators, and once they know that, that's when they'll start to put out those female flowers with the fruits. And finally, just down here we have got the lettuce box, and there were peas in here, but I haven't planted anything in here since, so I'll need to think about what we're going to get in there. But light levels are a problem down here. It is quite shady up until after about 2 o'clock. These were the potato containers this year. They didn't do very well because they were mainly leaf mulch. They kept the moisture in, but it just didn't keep the nutrients in, so they need a real good top up next year with plenty of feed and some actual compost. But down in these 5 containers we have got the spring onions. We've got 3 different lots in there and they all seem to be doing really well. I was a little bit worried because of the shade and the light levels in this area, but they don't seem to have done too well. The potatoes have done well in previous years, so that's why I do think it is a nutrient issue rather than anything else, because that soil was definitely moist enough. The pond looks golden in this light. Everything has really taken off. It's its 2nd year. The water lily is starting to spread lovely. The mare's tail is starting to take up a nice proportion of the pond as well, and everything is just starting to look really lush. The only problem is with all this sunlight, the weed in there really does start to take off, so you need to keep on top of that. I need to think about what I'm going to pot in here. So I have got the water mint, so I might think about putting the Sarracenia into that pot. It just might be a little bit too big, so I need to think what I'm doing with these 2 plants. And I have also got the pot over there to plant up as well with something aquatic. If you watch some past videos, you'll see that I've got lots of baby newts in here. I've got all sorts of aquatic wildlife, and I've even had some chaffinches. There's loads of different birds that come down to visit this pond. If you haven't got one, I would really recommend building anything from something this big, but you could go really small. Any type of water will bring in so much wildlife into your garden. The wildlife area is looking wild as ever. All the Achillea is beautifully still bobbing around, all those dusky pink colours from where they've started to go over. As with a lot of the plants in there, everything is starting to go to seed, but I'm going to leave it. I will chop back some of the Achillea just so that it can put more energy into its root ball for next year. And they do seem to spread by the root ball anyway, but I'll leave a few to go to seed, see if we can get a few more just to naturalise around. But other than the Achillea, there isn't much more going on in there at the moment, I'm afraid. I do need to think about the planting in here next year, as I do want to try and extend and lengthen the time that I've got flowering plants. Do you remember this fern? It's one of my absolute favourites, and it's starting to put on lots of new growth. So I gave this a real good feed. There's lots of manure right at the bottom, well rotted manure. I've had it for quite a few years, but I did have a rose in here before that didn't do too well, so I think it's got plenty of feed in there. I don't think it liked the sun that we had earlier on, as it has started to crisp up a little bit, but it seemed to be bouncing back with all that new growth. The cordlins seem to be doing absolutely fine, so I did hack back the main one, which is just at the back, you can't really see it, and then these two are some off cuttings. So I cut off some of the pups, dipped them in some rooting powder and just dipped them into the soil next to it, hoping that they'll take root. They don't seem to be dying off. There's a few of the leaves which have started to turn brown, but you would expect that anyway, so fingers crossed I should get 2 more cordlin plants. Nothing much really goes on in here. This seems to be just a little frog pond, just full of snails and frogs. I don't get any tadpoles in here anymore. It's just full of the oxygenated weed, and it keeps clear all year round despite being surrounded by leaves and all sorts that falls in there. They say you should clear your pond every 5 years, but I mean this has been here for 4 and it seems to be absolutely fine. Forgot to take this guy home with me yesterday, so I must remember to take him, but it is all going off in here. We have got tomatoes ripening all over the place, and the cucumbers are doing really well, along with the lemon apple, so it's a first for those. I'm just waiting for those now to start to turn yellow. You can see that I'm starting to get some mildew on some of these leaves. It's because I do water down here and they are quite close to the soil, so we'll just start to cut those back soon, because you don't really want that to start taking over your plants, and the sooner you remove it the better. And they go on my compost heap. Some people might tell you not to, but I find it's absolutely fine. And to be fair, I don't think you can really stop the mildew happening, especially in a greenhouse when it is so humid. But down here we have got the lemon apple cucumber, so I'm now waiting for this to start to turn really yellow. It hasn't quite started to form the yellowness all the way around it just yet, but we have got quite a few. First time doing these, and I was a bit worried because they're quite late to fruit, but I'm telling you, they've soon caught up with the rest of them. Hey, Mr. Snail, that ain't for you. Come on. These are the cordlin pups that we pulled off, planted up. Now I forgot to root powder these, so these are literally just in the soil with some perlite and watered in. Now this one is looking a bit sickly, so I thought let's give it a go and check if it's grown any roots, just to see whether it gives us any hope for the other 5. So let's just, oh no, I can't see any growth of roots at all on there. If anything, that's started to rot off in the soil, so that doesn't give me much hope for these ones. But that was a lot smaller than those, so hopefully these will over time start to put the roots down. It's just that one was a little bit too small and might have dried out a little bit. We have hope as gardeners, don't we? We've still got plenty of the standard Telegraph cucumbers to harvest. These seem to have done really well. I've probably had about 5 or 6 off this plant already, and they are monsters. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 there, and we have got 1 at the bottom. Now they're not starting to produce many fruits at the top, so they might be done now, but we have the apple lemon starting to take over. The tomatoes, they've really started to ripen quite nicely. I've already picked quite a few to take home, so we'll pick a few more today, and we've actually got quite a few still starting to form at the top levels as well. So you'll find as soon as the tomato has reached the top of your greenhouse, you really want to just take the top off it. So that will make the plant start to put the energy into the fruit production rather than starting to grow taller. Just take a pair of secateurs and just cut out the growing tip, but keep on top of removing those suckers or side shoots as well. Down in this bed is a bit of a nothing bed. We've got 2 tomato plants and what I thought was a cucumber, but I think it's actually a gherkin. So it looks like a cucumber, but the skin seems to be rather tough. I took one home yesterday, but I haven't dared try one yet. So can you eat gherkins as cucumbers if you let them get bigger? I'm not too sure. I think they're specifically bred to be a bit more gherkiny than cucumber, but we will give them a go. You're going to have to ignore the grass paths. I need to give them a real good strim, but I need some nice dry weather just to dry it out, because strimming wet grass is a big no-no. It just doesn't seem to work. But just look at this dahlia. It's absolutely covered in blooms, and there's still plenty more to come. The problem with it is it does get battered around in the wind, so I did think about staking it up, but it seems to have done really well. I just love that apricot sunset vibe that it gives. I think it might be banana cabana or cabana banana, but it really does well, and it has survived quite a few really tough winters here. So whilst it's still flowering, I make sure that I give it a real good feed just to make sure that it keeps giving me all those beautiful blooms. Quite a few of them this year seem to be quite open flowered, but the original is like this one, the true spiky cactus. Look at that. Stunning. Down here in the bed next to the dahlia, we have got 2 tomato plants. I seem to let them go wild every year. I don't keep on top of the pruning on the outdoor ones, which is a little bit silly because they are more prone to blight when they've got lots of foliage and they're outdoors in the wet, and we've had a very wet summer, so I should keep an eye on those. And then at the back we have got a couple of squash plants, the roast potato squash, and they seem to be coming on really well as well. We've got this little chap down here, but it does seem to be growing pretty well, and we've got a couple more little baby fruits on the way as well, so we're hopeful for quite a few of these squash. It's the first time I've grown these, so I'm looking forward to tasting them. All of my compost heaps are already really full, and I've still got the late summer autumn clearance to do, so we might need to think about setting up a new compost heap. I'll bring you guys along with me for when I do, just so that I can give you some tips on how best to set that up. And just down here we have got the wildlife area, so we've got the coreopsis and the echinacea. We've got crocosmia at the back there. This one flowered a beautiful yellow trumpets, but those two seem to have sulked because I did move them. But hopefully next year they will decide to show themselves. We've got the dahlias at the back there. They're still in bloom, and they should keep blooming well into November until the first frosts. You've just got to make sure that you keep on top of the deadheading. And also the salvia and the other echinacea that I planted up a couple of weeks ago are starting to bloom. And we've even got some little foxgloves and pot marigolds starting to germinate, which is just starting to fill up some of those spaces for us. And the further down we get, the more wild it seems to get. So we've got all the lavender, which are just along the paths here, which are flopped over. I do need to think about thinning out that nigella next year, because that is going to seed all over the place. But we've got nigella, we've got the mallow weed, we've got pot marigolds, we've got sage at the back. There is a pear tree in there as well, and then right at the back we've got the sedum and the catmint, and even a couple of roses are in there. But honestly, I really need to thin this out and really think about the planting next year. Everything seems to be happening in this bed. So over here we have got the beans, and we've also got these squash plants, which all seem to be doing absolutely terrific this year. And at the back we have got the leeks, which seem to now starting to be going over, so we'll probably pull those up soon. I haven't seen as many bees on them as I have over the previous months. But in here we've got uchiki curry, we have got mashed potato squash or roast potato squash, Maria de Chogia, and a butternut squash I believe as well. Oh, and don't forget another one of those gherkins. And gherkins you probably call pickles over in the US. I don't seem to have had any germination down in this bed just yet, so we put some kale and some early sprouting broccoli as well. Hopefully give it a couple of weeks and it shouldn't be too long before they start to pop up. And look, you can just see all the squash starting to trail all over the place. We've got the sunflowers there standing beautifully tall like the other ones, hoping that they should start to self-seed, and we should have plenty more next year that I can tie up to the fruit cage. And then just down here, this is where we've got more of the mashed potato squash or roast potato. I'm pretty certain that there's the same plant now that I've seen them, but yeah, we've got quite a few on here, so 4 or 5 more. So I've heard some of you say that they're probably ready to harvest, but then I've read some say that they're not ready until the autumn. So let me know whether these are more of a winter squash or a summer squash in the comments below, because I wouldn't mind harvesting one now if I can. As we just go into the fruit cage, we've got the blueberries here on the left hand side. I've probably only got a couple of more pickings from these, but they've done really well this year, and I've kept on top of ericaceous feed over the summer months just to keep those fruits going. But I really do need to give it a good weed in there because the bindweed is starting to swamp it out a little bit too much. I really need to keep on top of the berries in here, so I didn't pick the red currants. They didn't do as great as the other ones, so I stripped my other ones bare, but I've left them. So next year I really must pick them. It does look a little bit silly that I've got a fruit cage full of rotten fruit. Down here are the gooseberries along with a lot of weeds, so we need to get in here and give this a good tidy up. I think that's what's going to be over the next few weeks, is just weed because of all the rain and heat that we've had recently. But yeah, the gooseberries down there, if you can just about see, and then we've got 2 more gooseberry plants just here. They've done really well for me this year. If you've seen in previous videos, we got a ton of gooseberries. They're not doing much this time of year. There are still a few berries on there, but they'll just rot off and they'll feed the wasps and the bees. This is the other grapevine that I've got. So this is actually younger than the other vine, but because this gets so much more sunlight, it's put on so much more growth than the other one. You can probably see that I've got way too many vines on this. You should really keep it down to just 1 or 2. So in the winter, I will give this a real good prune back. For the time being, it is rewarding me with lots of grapes. It's the first time for this channel for grapes, so I'm really excited. I've heard about thinning the grapes out, so I have gone in there and just removed some of those smaller grapes that I don't think will form anyway. But I think I need to remove a few more. But I'm going to go home, do a little bit of research, as I do always with this grape, before I start doing anything. The last thing I want is for the grapes to start to get mildew or start to rot off because there's just too many on there. So really want to take care of this plant. Just along from the grape, we've got loads of raspberry canes along here. So they didn't do too well here, so I might think about planting some more, but I'm pretty sure these will start to send up runners anyway. But over there, they seem to have really taken off. So I've already seen quite a few that can be picked. So a few of them will be coming home tonight. And we've got a mixture of the Autumn Bliss and also a little yellow one. I can't remember its name though. That was the August plot tour, guys, so I hope you enjoyed coming around with me. I mean, I have got a to-do list the length of my arm now, so I think the next few weeks is going to be ticking things off and getting a lot of weeding done. Next weekend I will do a what to sow in August video, as I've got quite a few little bits that I want to get in the ground, and August is really your last opportunity to start sowing some of your vegetables. I hope you've all had a lovely weekend and a lovely week ahead of you, and I'll see you all very soon. So take care, guys. See you later. Bye bye.